Okay, everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Grace Breen, and I'm from Women's Health and Wellbeing, Barwon Southwest. I work in Warrnambool on the lands of the Peak Wurrung people of the Gunditjmara Nation. And we're really excited to have you here today at Respect 2040's second webinar in the series we have put together for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. We're now halfway through the 16 Days of Activism, and today is actually International Day of People with a Disability. So please let's just take a moment to consider our friends, family, colleagues, and fellow citizens as they move through this world living with a disability. 16 Days of Activism will finish up in a week on International Human Rights Day, and we have one more webinar to go. So for those who don't know, Respect 2040 is a regional partnership of organisations, local governments, agencies, educational institutions, and community groups that are 100% unified in the fight to end gendered violence in the Barwon Southwest. Today's webinar has got a great, really important focus on engaging men and boys as allies in preventing gendered violence. It's a crucial but sometimes overlooked part of the picture in the work we do. So today's webinar series will be recorded. Don't worry, all of you watching, you're not going to be on the screen. There's also closed captions, which will be available at the bottom of the toolbar if you so require. And at the end, there'll be a link to in the chat to an evaluation document. It'll take 2 minutes. Please, if you have time, please do provide feedback. We really rely on it for planning, funding, acquittal, and all sorts of boring things that are crucial to our work. And if we finish early today, we'll have time for some questions. So please pop those in the Q&A function at the end with the name of the person that you are asking a question of, and we'll do our best to get through them all. Okay, I just want to first of all start today by acknowledging the traditional lands, owners of the lands in which we meet, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. First up today, we have very lucky to have Jacquie O'Brien from Respect Victoria. She's the Director of Communications and Community Change. Jacquie has an established career in policy, advocacy, communications, and stakeholder relations. She's led policy and regulatory reform across the reproductive health and environmental sectors, and she's passionate about the power of creative communications to drive social change. Jacquie has held senior positions in the Victorian Government, Zoos Victoria, and MSI Reproductive Choices, where she actually led the development of the world's first reproductive coercion white paper. So she's going to do a fantastic presentation for us today. Take it away, Jacquie.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Grace and Hannah, for hosting us today, and also to my fellow webinar presenters as well. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your presentation. So I'm not going to take up too much time because, yeah, I'd really love to hear what you're doing as well. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all meeting. I'm sure we're on a range of different traditional lands. I'm actually on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, so I pay my respects to their elders past and present, particularly to the matriarchs of all First Nations women who are really have been instrumental in driving the modern prevention movement here in Victoria and across this country. I also acknowledge all people who have experienced or are still experiencing any form of gendered violence, and pay my respects to you as well. You are the people that we do this work for and drive our work every day. I'm going to talk you through the story of a campaign that we have affectionately come to call the Kind Man campaign. It's called What Kind of Man Do You Want to Be? And we launched it earlier this year in June. And I wanted to take you through all of the hopes, fears, dreams, assumptions, some of them very wildly wrong assumptions that we had during the development of this campaign. It's a campaign focused on men, for men, by men. And really an attempt to bring men into the prevention conversation, particularly prevention of violence against women, but actually we explore a whole range of gendered topics, and particularly where gendered violence can really start and be driven. Before I do, what I am going to do is I'm actually going to set the scene by starting with a 60-second video of the campaign. This is something that you will see. It's just launched in cinemas across Victoria. So hopefully when you are out and about watching the summer blockbusters this year, you will actually see that. So I want to set the scene first with playing a video of that so you can just get a sense of who we're talking about. So thank you.
I never really thought about what my role as a man was. That probably wasn't until you get a bit older.
How I learned about masculinity, I'd say, is through movies.
Watching those shows, it was always like the man was the hero, the man was the guy there to save the day.
You have these expectations as a male that, you know, some things are soft.
And if there are problems, you know, you're going to suck it up, you're going to crack on.
You have to go out there and continue to fight until you win. And in today's world, you're never going to win because there's always someone out there bigger, stronger, smarter, richer.
I think that a lot of guys have what they call like that fixed mindset of just winning and losing. Like, it doesn't matter. It's room for you to grow.
If all these pressures about what a man should be weren't existing anymore, we'd have a lot more men who would be happy. A lot of men who people would feel safe around to express themselves. We'd stop comparing ourselves to each other. We'd stop comparing ourselves to the past. And I think we would just look after ourselves. We wouldn't look after others.
So that just gives you a bit of a sneak peek into how we have, or what the flavour of the campaign, if you like, and the tone of the campaign. I want to now take you right back to where it all began and why we chose to follow this approach and this sort of storytelling, real Victorian men talking about their, a lot of the time, their struggles with masculinity and really questioning forms of masculinity that were deeply ingrained in their lives, in growing up for them, but also across generations as well for them. We started What Kind of Man Do You Want to Be, the development of it about 2 years ago. And it was at a time where, for many of you who may or may not know Respect Victoria, we're the state's primary prevention agency set up out of the Royal Commission. And we're probably best known, especially when we first started, for doing a lot of campaigns. And you can imagine at the time, so this would have been about 2018, 2019, we didn't know as much as we know now, particularly about behaviour change, about the role of men and boys, about shame, about how to engage men and boys in opportunities around prevention. So a lot of how we portrayed men in campaigns was either in two ways. It was as a perpetrator, or it was as somebody who could be a bystander, an active bystander. So, and that was what a lot of campaigns were doing actually at the time. So it's not to say it was wrong, it's just to say that the evidence tells us it's so much more nuanced and so much more complex now. And so we had, when we were developing this campaign in particular, we were really mindful of the fact that with these types of campaigns where we had men kind of cast in these two roles, we actually weren't getting men engaging with the campaign. We were getting a lot of women engaging in the campaign, which is really important, but not a lot of men. In fact, less than 10% of people who engage with our campaigns were men. Anybody who knows prevention knows that you cannot do prevention if you've only got 10% of the population kind of with their eyeballs and focus. You have to look at how do we do this on a population-wide or community-wide scale. So for us, it was really clear we needed to find a way to responsibly and to mindfully engage men in prevention efforts. So with this, we kind of set about, with a bit of a test and trial approach, we started probably really quite naively, I think, where we thought, okay, if we look at educating men on this is what we don't want you to do, these are the behaviours that we don't want you to display. And we actually put a call out to 5 creative agencies and said, how would you do this? How would you actually come up with this creatively? We got back 5 very different creative concepts, but all of them were very, they seemed to be telling men, almost preaching to men, using a lot of celebrity kind of spokespeople, footballers, etc. And we thought, well, we don't feel it's going to resonate, but let's go out and test it. So what we did is we ended up testing it with men and women across Victoria in focus groups. And as we suspected, it fell flat. And we couldn't quite put our finger on it. With women, they were like, yeah, you know, like, it's okay, but how, you know, are men really going to listen to this? Men were very defensive. As soon as you introduce the topic of gendered violence into the conversation, you saw the shoulders go up and almost the shutters come down. It was a feeling of real defensiveness because it was a feeling that, am I going to be attacked? Am I going to be seen as a perpetrator? Is that what you're saying? It's not what we're saying. It's not what any of us say, but that was absolutely the feeling. So after about 6 months of really kind of talking with a small sample of the Victorian population to kind of test some of these concepts, we thought it's time to kind of go back to the drawing board. At the time, we were working with Jesuit Social Services on through the Men's Project, and I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the incredible work of the Men's Project that they do. We had worked with them. They were leading the Man Box survey. And we were also working on the qualitative part for the Man Box called Willing, Capable and Confident. It was at that time that the research came out and there was this really impactful statistic. And I am about to paraphrase widely, so please do actually read the research. It is incredibly insightful research. But the one that really hit us was that 4/5 of Australian men don't necessarily agree with what are called man box rules. So there's really rigid ways of being a man that can often be harmful. And those ways can be, you know, being dominating, being controlling, always knowing where your partner is, always getting the last say or the last word in decisions in relationships, you know, never saying no to sexual partners. A lot of these sort of hyper-masculine roles that can often be seen as quite outdated. 4/5 of Australian men didn't agree with these ways of being a man, but they absolutely felt that that's what society expected of them. And that was the moment, I think, that we realised this is why men were being very defensive. We actually weren't talking about that social pressure, that social expectation that men need to be this way, even if they don't agree with it. So this is where we thought, why don't we go back, test it a little bit with men and ask them, what do they think about these pressures? And the difference when you go in there and you start talking from the get-go about what are the pressures of being a man today was night and day. When we went in there, first of all, and talked about gendered violence, it was like this, defensive, very hard to get things out of them. When you started to talk about the pressures of masculinity and what it was to be a man today, the shoulders went down, the conversation flowed, and it was incredible just how much men wanted to talk about this. And when I'm talking about men, this is age 18 to 44, right across the state from different cultural backgrounds, different ages, different family makeups, some fathers, some not fathers, just really this was something that men actually wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about what are these social pressures, where do they come from, and what would life be like if those pressures weren't there, if they could choose a different way. Part of that made us realise, and in particular the conversations with men actually made us realise, why aren't we asking men about this? Why aren't we asking them, what kind of man do you want to be? Because society, from the minute any of us are born, we are told these are our gender roles, and it comes at us from very different and often very insidious and often very invisible kind of ways, but it is really strong. What would happen if we actually asked men, what kind of man do you want to be? And that was actually the birth of the campaign. Now, I do want to pause a bit and just have a caution about campaigns. You know, as a communications person, I love them. I'm a very visual person. I love stories. And as humans, we are hardwired to take note of stories. Stories is how we have communicated, since the days of being in the caves. And it's still a way that really resonates with us today. But a campaign on its own will not prevent violence. It has to be plugged into prevention work that's happening on the ground. So for us with this campaign, it was, let's not just start this conversation with men. Let's make sure that it is hooked into actual work that is happening with men and boys right across this state. So we partnered with Jesuit Social Services, particularly the Men's Project, because we had been doing the research with them and they had been leading the research on Man Box. Incredible research, big shout out to that, and the Adolescent Man Box that's just come out as well. It is exceedingly powerful in the work that we do. But we worked with them to say, let's develop a campaign that is going to be useful to you and to anybody who's working with men and boys in this space. And let's use this campaign not to be a panacea. It won't be a panacea. Campaign will never be a panacea, but it's there to support your conversations. It's there to open up a conversation with men and boys. And often, when we were talking to practitioners, they were saying that can be the trickiest part. How do I get them speaking? How do I get particularly boys reflecting on this and what it means in their life? So we put a casting call out to Victorian men to be part of this campaign, to really start talking about their journeys of masculinity. What are some of the challenges that they have had, but also how they've navigated it and how they're still navigating it. Because as we know with gender, it's something that it will change over time, and our relationships with it will change over time as we move through life in different ways, as we become parents, as we become grandparents, as we get new jobs, meet new people. All of these things really impact on our relationships to gender and how we consider and behave with gender. We thought that we would really struggle to cast real Victorian men. And we thought we're going to have to lean on people and sort of lean on our best friends. Within 5 days, we had more than 80 men sign up to say they wanted to be part of this campaign, which was absolutely mind-blowing. From that 80, we had a short list of 20 who were incredible, and then down to 11 men, all of whom come from completely different backgrounds, different ages, different cultures, different jobs, different stages within their lives, different life experiences. And they actually formed the core of the campaign, What Kind of Man Do You Want to Be? The creative process itself, I think, was really interesting because we developed this campaign with them. We essentially worked with Jesuit Social Services with the Men's Project, and we had 2 incredible people, Kesh and Dominic from the Men's Project, who actually walked side by side with us, with the director, Prad Sen, incredible agency called the Open Arms, they only do social impact work like this. They don't do kind of commercial work. And we all worked together to actually cast these men, but also put a supportive infrastructure around them. A lot of these men, when you start to ask questions about the pressures of masculinity, one of the first places they go to is their upbringing. Their father, if their father was present, that is one of the first places that most of them will go to, is what was my relationship with my father growing up? What did I see as masculinity through him? What came through to me? What did I really value? But also, what do I want to change? And as you can imagine, there were a variety of experiences. Some of these men, and you will see it in the campaign, they talk about how important their father was a role model, but also how important their mothers and their sisters are. The family unit is so critical in actually working through masculinity, particularly for young boys. But also there were others such as Fui, and Fui is the older man in the campaign, beautiful smile with the mustache, who talks about his father. And he had a difficult upbringing. He says he feared his father. It was a violent upbringing. But he made that conscious decision when he first had children, when he and his partner first had their child. That was not going to be the type of father he was going to be. He made a very conscious decision about that. He talks about that in great depth. And as you can imagine, that is incredibly powerful, but also you need to support people when doing this sort of work. So we did have trauma-informed counselling that walks alongside all of these men as well, because some of them talk about experiences of violence. Essentially, with this campaign, it is there as an offer to men. It is an offer to say, we invite you to reflect on masculinity. We know that harmful, rigid forms of masculinity, where men are told this is the way you can be and the only way that being a man is really harmful. It's harmful to men. It's harmful to people in their lives, and we know it absolutely drives men's violence against women, and we know it drives other forms of gendered violence as well. So this is really critical that we bring men in at this reflection point. This campaign was actually designed as it's a pathway. It's an invitation in first. Think about what masculinity means to you. Think about these messages that you're getting. Think about, are they right for you? Are they right for the people in your lives? What would you do if that pressure wasn't there? How could you choose a different way? And a lot of the men being able to actually say that and offer up, this is how I feel, this is my experience, has been really, really powerful. I think one of the most important things is all of these men, they're not perfect. They don't have the full answers. And I think that's really, really important in this work, because navigating masculinity, navigating how to actually, I guess, almost get to healthy masculinity for a person, it's a journey. We actually don't teach kids this. We are starting to with respectful relationships, and I think this is great that we have the team talking about respectful relationships today. But we haven't done it for so many men and boys, and that is a shame. And now is an opportunity to start with this. The campaign itself, it launched in June this year. We had a 3.5-week period, and we actually said to Jesuit Social Services, please use it in the work that you're doing. We also worked with the Men's Initiative from Women's Health Grampian, so up in Ballarat, where we have the Ballarat Saturation Model. They're using these videos within the work that they're doing to open up conversations. It's not the only conversation, but it is a beautiful way to start a conversation, to get people in reflective modes so that they can start to think about this and unpack what gender means for them and masculinity means for them. But of course, I can tell you, all of this incredible stuff about it, but the results, I think, that's really where we kind of work out, have we actually made an impact? So I'll just run you through a couple of stats. This is not, as I said, this is a pathway approach to this campaign. So what we will be doing is this campaign will be built on with more and more stories over the coming months and years. But we will also be progressing the stories from ones of talking about masculinity and reflection to actually taking them down a pathway of behaviour change, to working with more and more organisations and individuals that do this work specifically with men and boys to make sure this campaign can continue to support their work as their practice evolves. And I think that's absolutely critical if you're doing campaign work. Don't do it in isolation. Always have it attached to that practice that's happening on the ground. But the results were more than we had expected. In the first 3.5 weeks when we launched this campaign, it went out on TikTok and Meta. It's now out on YouTube, cinemas, and you'll see posters out and about as well. But TikTok's probably the key place where this has really taken off. And that's where a lot of the eyeballs are. That's where our audience is. Our key audience, or our primary audience for this, was men 18 to 44. And we really wanted to see, could we reach 1.5 million people within that audience within 3.5 weeks? At the end of the 3.5 weeks, we'd actually reached 9 million people, 80% of whom were men in that target audience. So it was huge. What that tells us is it was working with the algorithm. And as we know, with algorithms, boys are served up, in particular, so much content that can be really damaging and have really harmful ideas about masculinity. So this is what we wanted to do, is we wanted something that could at least work in with the algorithm and give them something to at least counter that. What's a different point of view that they're not getting at the moment? So that is an early indication of, yes, it's working. The second thing I think which was really pleasing, is we thought, gosh, if we could get 1 million plays of the videos of these men, their individual stories of each man, if we could get 1 million views, that would be amazing. We ended up getting 16 million. So that tells you that people were interested, that they did want to hear these stories. Again, stories resonate with people. And then the final one is that it's the commentary. We've never had so much commentary. In the 3.5 weeks, there were more than nearly 900 comments and comment threads on the videos. And when you delve into them, that's when you see, are they actually reflecting? And are they actually thinking about masculinity and what it means to me? A lot of the conversations did focus on that. They focused on specific stories. And so those key stories were fatherhood, which is Fui's story, but also men and friendship groups and how they can be harmful or really helpful. And then the other were things like the online world, and in particular gaming, but also increasingly what's called the incel world, or involuntary celibate. You would see a lot of that in the sort of Andrew Tate type manosphere spaces. They really resonated with audiences, and the sort of commentary was talking about, yes, I think that is a really, like, yes, this happens to me. I get this in my feed. But also these commentaries of, you know, are they saying this about fatherhood? Well, I think they're saying this, and this is what I think about fatherhood. That's what we want. We want men talking. We want men thinking about this and questioning some of these roles. It's not the end point by any chance. It's the beginning of bringing men into this conversation and the work that we are doing around prevention. I just want to finish with a couple of reflections. Some of the challenges that we are, I think, up against, but also the what's next as well. So probably one of the key challenges, and this is a challenge in any work that you do with men and boys and around masculinities, is accountability and building accountability into the work of this. It is not just about saying, poor men, let's give you a free pass. It is about saying these pressures are real, they harm you, they impact on you, they also impact on all of us as well. So we all have a stake and we all need to do something about it. But you are accountable for the choices that you make. It's a work in progress, I think, with anything, with any of us when we are doing this kind of reflective work, to continue to be accountable to that work. One of the key things now is to look at, we want to develop an adolescent version of this campaign, but actually bringing girls into this and non-binary folk into the work of this, which does help with accountability. I think the other thing as well, I'll just end on, is this campaign, as I said, it keeps building. And probably the key thing that you will see next is in March, we will be adding 14 more stories to the suite of the Kind Man campaign. We've spent a year working with an incredible organisation called Polaron, where they have gone into communities and worked with 5 of the most populous language groups within Victoria. And we've worked with men to actually develop their stories and represent their stories in language. So that will also be coming out in March. But what you will see is more and more will be adding to these stories. And finally, I just want to end on an invitation to all of you. I really invite you to have a look at the videos and to think about, can they help in the work that you do, especially if you are looking at engaging men and boys, or even if you have a man or a boy in your life and you do want to talk about masculinity or they're struggling with it, please do use them. But most importantly, if you have feedback, if you think, gosh, I wish there was something like this, or gosh, I wish there was a resource like this, or why aren't they pointing to my resource on this? Because I think that's really important for it. Please do get in touch, because this is exactly what we want the campaign to do. We want it to support all of this incredible work that is happening and emerging right across this state. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jacquie. That was an incredible presentation. It was so hopeful and informative, and we really appreciate you taking the time. We know how busy you are. You've got a huge role. It's halfway through 16 days of activism, and to have you here speaking to us today was just absolutely fantastic. And the generous invitation to invite all of us into the work that you do was really appreciated too. I know I will be engaging. Next up, we're really lucky to hear from Andrew Mason, who's the CEO of Warrnambool City Council. Before coming to Warrnambool, Andrew was the CEO of Corangamite Shire, which also falls in our catchment area. So I think suffice to say, he knows our region very well. Andrew will be providing some reflections on Warrnambool City Council's organisational-wide sexual harassment training and encouraging both men and women into non-traditional roles at the organisation. So men into the early years sector and women into the outdoor workforce. Thank you, Andrew. Take it away.
Right.
We might need the.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a really important topic, and glad to be here to talk about some of the work that's happening at Warrnambool City Council. So just a bit about the council area. So Warrnambool's a growing, vibrant, fantastic place to live, population of about 36,000 people. The council itself has a staff of about 400 people, but that actually means, in reality, we have 800 staff on the books, which is reflective of large numbers of part-time employees. A lot of stuff to look after. We've got 350 buildings, for example, from public toilets to libraries to manage. A budget of $100 million, but we need to spread that across 90 different services. So a fairly big organisation in Warrnambool, but fairly typical of other councils and regional cities. So one of the things that I wanted to talk a bit about is some of the work that we've been doing around trying to encourage people into non-traditional roles. It's part of our gender equality action plan, and it's, I think, a really important way that you can change gender stereotypes and make our workforce and workplaces welcoming. So we currently have 6 women working in our outdoor workforce. The outdoor workforce has traditionally been an area which has just been male dominated. It wouldn't be uncommon to go to other councils and find no women in the outdoor workforce. What we found is that getting women into outdoor workforce roles has really required some strong leadership and some work about making the places like the depot safe and welcoming, We've done a lot of work around staff training on sexual harassment and gender equity, which I'll reflect on later. And what we've also been really lucky is that we've had some really strong women leaders and who have provided role models, who have been really important role models once they've got into those roles. So we've also had some success in non-traditional professional roles. So we've got women in engineering roles, for example, asset inspections. Part of the work that we've done is trying to really work out how we can profile women in the organisation, but also across the community who are in non-traditional roles. As an example, for International Women's Day, we had two of our female leaders, Julie Anderson in the assets manager, and Bridget is one of our team leaders in Parks and Gardens, talking about their leadership role and how they've evolved and developed that leadership skills. We were really lucky on that International Women's Day to have Alison Watkins, former CEO of Coca-Cola Amatil and currently on the Reserve Bank, was also reflecting on her leadership role and giving some tips. So a great session and a really important way for us to really very publicly and profile women in leadership roles in non-traditional areas. We've also established a women's network, which provides an opportunity for women in our organisation to do networking and professional development. It's two sides of the story. So we can't just work on getting women into non-traditional roles. I'm certainly a big believer that we have to encourage and get men into non-traditional roles, and it probably feeds nicely in with some of the content that Jacquie was talking about. And what we've actually probably found is that in some way getting men into non-traditional roles has been really hard. We have currently 4 men in our early years team, so that's either kinders or childcare. We also have we've also been really focusing on this and making sure that in our marketing promotional material that we've really tried to profile these roles and these men in these roles. I think the reality is that we've found we've had resistance from parents in childcare roles. We've had threats to remove children from childcare, for example, if they've got male carers. It's been actually pretty hard work. It's supporting these men and making sure that we're retaining the men, but we've got there, let alone growing that workforce. So yeah, certainly more work to be done by us in this space. And finally, I wanted to talk a bit about some organisational training that we've done in association with Women's Health. It's been a great initiative. So we've done, so on the back of some concerns around sexual harassment, we decided that we would roll out sexual harassment sexual harassment prevention training for all of our staff. So what we found is that while sexual harassment reporting was not coming through on our kind of official stats or data, but we were finding that there was cases and issues in right across the organisation. A lot of this was outside issues coming in, being brought into the organisation. Certainly, we've seen social media and digital issues becoming present and creating issues with sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour in the organisation. So we rolled out the sexual harassment prevention training. Pleasingly, staff really engaged on this. So we had 570 staff complete the training. All of the senior leaders in the organisation, including myself, did the training, and we developed an online training module for those people that weren't able to attend in person. So I think it's been a really good result. Some of the feedback from the training was that 90% of the staff who did it rated the training as either very or extremely important. 94% thought that they felt very, very or extremely knowledgeable about sexual harassment after the training. So some great results there. I would caution that there's still more work to be done. So 77% of staff who did the training felt safe to report concerns. So that probably still means that 20-odd% of staff are unsure or unsafe or feel unsafe reporting sexual harassment. And 64% of staff believe leadership take sexual harassment seriously, where 33% expressed doubt. So while I guess the training was an amazing way of getting this message out to our staff, clearly there's further work to be done, but we feel that it's really created an important base to take us forward on this important issue. So hopefully that's provided a bit of a snapshot of what some of the things that are happening at Warrnambool Council are. And I think we'll have to take some questions at the end if we have time.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, fantastic to get the local context of what we're doing here in our region and the fantastic work you're leading at Warrnambool City Council. Next, we're going to take it to another area of the community. We're going to hear from two professionals from Warrnambool East Primary School, which is a fabulous state school doing great work in educating the next generation of Warrnamboolians on gender equity. We have Romina Kumaraswamy, who's the Respectful Liaison Officer for the Wimmera Southwest area, and Nicole Farrelly, who's the Disability and Inclusion Learning teacher at Warrnambool East Primary School. They're going to speak about respectful relationships. Take it away. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thanks very much, Grace. And yeah, just before I start, I'll mention that I'm dialing in from Warrnambool, so I'm on the lands of the Gunditjmara and Peakrong people of the Eastern Maar. So I'd like to acknowledge them. So we are going to have a bit of a chat. Nicole and I are from kind of different areas. I work at the Department of Education. Nicole's at Warrnambool East Primary. So I will talk to you a bit about what Respectful Relationships is. I'm the liaison officer among a team of Respectful Relationships officers for the Wimmera Southwest area. We also have a Respectful Relationships team in our Barwon region. So that's also a point to clarify. I'm conscious there's probably people dialing in from a range of areas. So there are a couple of teams that we work with a range of schools across the region. So we're going to talk to you today about how the program engages men and how we engage men and boys through the Respectful Relationships program. And thanks, Nicole, for running the slides. So what is the program? The program came out of the Royal Commission, and basically it's a primary prevention program. So it's designed to prevent violence against women and children, and it does this through educating children firstly about social and emotional learning. So we teach children to build resilience, confidence, and engage a lot of skills to develop their social emotional skills. So that's the basis. And then what we do is we have a component of the program that is a family violence prevention component. And that's taught across, the program is taught across public, non-government, government schools, and primary and secondary. And we kind of, it works in a way that's, it's scaled up regardless of whether you're in prep or whether the school has been running it for a while. It's designed to be adapted for each school's context. So it is, it's basically a program that supports schools and communities to promote and model respect and equality and teach children how to build healthy relationships. So you can go to the next slide, Nicole. Thanks. And I guess we do this we talk about implementing respectful relationships through a whole of school approach. So our goal is not that we just teach students these skills, but that we build a culture of respect and equality across the whole school. So we acknowledge that schools are, a workplace, they're a community hub, and a place of learning. And so the evidence tells us that when we are looking to make change and in attitudes and behaviours, it's best done when we engage learning on a whole of school kind of way. And so you can see that diagram on the screen kind of talks about the various elements of a whole school approach. I won't spend too much going into it, except to say, I think we try to make sure, school leadership and commitment are on board. There's a big emphasis on having a school culture and environment that supports gender equality. We also have a component where we equip schools to support them to navigate things like family violence and sexual abuse and things like that, so schools understand the processes and supports that are in place for those things. And there's a component about community partnerships as well, which I think is also good to mention in this context, because as schools are a part of the community, it's always great where schools can engage with other organisations that have similar goals, so that we can really make a big impact in our community and have that kind of holistic wraparound support for students. So I might just draw you to the next slide, which is our focus for today, and which is what Nicole will be talking about, which is our teaching and learning component. And this is the crux of the Respectful Relationships program. So schools can do this by using the Resilience, Rights and Respectful Relationships curriculum. So this is a curriculum that is now it's a core component of the Victorian curriculum, and it is a set of resources that have been developed to support schools to deliver respectful relationships education. So it's done this. It does so with, teaching lessons across all year levels. So it starts in foundation. You can see we've got a few resources for the foundation, and then we have different resources for secondary students. And they're delivered by, the important thing to know is they're delivered by classroom teachers to their classes, regardless of gender. So the whole class is engaged at once. And it's really done so with a collaborative teaching technique. So we try to maximise, the program is designed to maximise peer-to-peer interaction, to get children to actually learn from each other by having practical activities that they can all engage and all discuss and actively engage with, which is very effective. So, and the main other thing to note is that there are about 8 topics that are covered. So the first 6 topics, I'll get you to jump to the next screen, Nicole. Yeah. So the first 6 topics are your social and emotional learning topics. So we've got emotional literacy, personal cultural strengths, positive coping, problem solving, and stress management and help seeking. So that's really teaching students with those valuable life skills that they can use to navigate complex issues that they might come across. And then when you get to topics 7 and 8, these are your family violence prevention topics. So that we emphasise to schools that these are really vital components of the program. And so topic 7 really gives students a chance to consider the influence of gender norms on the attitudes, the opportunities, and people's behaviour. And they learn about things like gender equality, inclusion, human rights, and the importance of respecting people of all genders. So that really sets up a really a good foundation for the family violence component, which is the next component on topic 8. So that's positive gender relationships. And this is where students can really practice, understand, engage with what is family violence and what is gender-based violence, and what is a safe and unsafe behaviour, what is, how do they exert control over their bodies, how do they discuss consent. So this has the school's requirement for consent education, or schools are required to teach consent education, and this kind of fulfills that component as well. And it also goes through, how can students care for each other? How can they peer support? How can they offer peer support? How can they help seek? And how can they respond to situations that they see that involve gender-based violence in their school or in their community or online? So it is a really great program. It's really practical tools that students can use. And I might now throw it over to Nicole to discuss how this actually looks in a classroom.
Beautiful. Well, to start off, we've been incredibly lucky that we have been a partner school with Respect for Relationships for multiple years. And in terms of making sure that we've got support from everyone, we've got a real push from leadership, the entire school, to make sure that we're committed to teaching this curriculum as well as wellbeing curriculum. And we've got a scope and sequence to make sure that we touch on that all the time. What I love about Respect for Relationships is that it's all research-based. If you get into any particular lesson, it gives you the research behind it, why we're going to teach it, and really builds the understanding of the teachers before they begin and the vital components that they have to go through. Like Romina talked about, topic 7 and topic 8 I will touch on today. So the thing that I really like is from primary, from foundation up to grade 6, it's like building blocks. We start at the very beginning and we build a little bit of knowledge every time or every year that we cover those components. I've got a couple of examples of activities there. So in Foundation to 2, you might look at preferences, similar, different. And one lesson that we did recently was looking at different roles in different workforces, being the police or fire, and who traditionally goes into those areas. And it was quite amazing to look at the traditional norms where we think, well, that's a policeman or a fireman and things like that. And even looking at females coming into those male jobs was amazing to look at. There's also other natural ways to do it through picture storybooks. And we've got one here that was looking at same and difference. And we did a survey beforehand and a survey after. And it was talking about twins being a boy and girl and how they grew up together and how different that might look. But once again, understanding that girls can have short hair, that girls can play with trucks and build and things like that, and the vital components to understand that that's all normal and it's okay. In grade 3 to 6, once again, we're talking about how any gender can be similar or different, and we hone into that in a more grown-up way. We've had particular events throughout the year too, where we had International Women's Day, and we took a group of girls to work with looking at speakers from around the community to build them up as well. But we took the boys in and did some curriculum-based activities through Respect for Relationships to build up that knowledge. So although we teach it to everyone, we do have components where sometimes we teach it separately, but generally we do focus on a whole school cohort. Lesson 2, our Respect for Relationships, and topic 8 is positive relationships. And this one we've actually taken a step further. So looking at what is violence and what's gender-based violence, and look at the importance around that. So doing, once again, it's those building blocks. We're not going to go straight into prep and look at violence. We're going to start looking at hurting people's feelings and hurting people's body and using the language that's really specific to that year level. I recently taught the lesson 3 to 6 looking at verbal violence and what it looked like in verbal, physical and emotional. It was quite amazing to think what the kids knew and didn't know. Often kids that we've had these lessons with just think, well, violence, the only type of it is physical violence. And quite a few of them were shocked to find out, well, it can be verbal, it can be emotional. We can do it online just because we're not doing it face to face, that what that can look like. And we continuously touch on this just because it's such a critical component of learning. We've actually taken that step further, which we thought was really important when we've developed what we call a program called Camp Crew. So we started to look at the behaviour data and data of what's been happening around the school. And we can hone into gender specific, we can look into verbal violence, we can look at physical violence and work out what's happening where. Now, to be honest, it was a very small cohort that you get that reoffend in those particular types, but we thought, what can we do to actually enhance that program and enhance some of that learning around that? So we worked with parents, we provided information about violence and what that looks like, because sometimes we can just become like, if it happens every day, sometimes we don't recognize it as much. So we had to work with the parents really well to get that understanding and get that knowledge there. Then we developed what a CAM crew, so it was one-to-one intervention. So that respectful relationships looks at everyone. And as we build tiered intervention, there was a small cohort they worked with. So this was a T3 intervention. And we used information from Thrive, which is our wellbeing program. We looked at respectful relationships. We've actually pulled some of that language from respectful relationships out to give to parents to show what that violence looks like, because it gives really beautiful definitions of that. For these little individuals, we developed goals that was specific to them. And doing like all good intervention, we monitor how they're going with that and if we can see any impact through these programs. But we have worked really hard on looking at this, and I think it's something that we continue to build on and continue to build knowledge. And we really hope by starting at that foundation level, moving up through high school, that this is taught, that we're going to make an impact on these young people moving forward. So yeah, it's a beautiful curriculum to follow, and we've learned a lot, and the teachers are really proud of where we are, and they've got a commitment to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a fabulous presentation. So great to get practical and useful tips, and to hear about how you're putting them in the classroom setting. So such important work. Thank you to all of our wonderful and insightful speakers. So from the top, we had Jacquie O'Brien, Andrew Mason, Romina Kumiswarami, and Nicole Farrelly. You've shared so much knowledge today, and we're all better informed for it. So thank you. We've got a couple of minutes, so maybe if you do have questions, pop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get them answered, whether live or just written responses. Thank you to Hannah Colgrave. Meticulous planning as always, and great technical delivery on today's webinar. And thank you all to our audience for coming. We hope you've left today feeling a little bit informed and a little less alone in the fight against gendered violence. I know I feel galvanized to continue my work. Please come along and spread the word for our final webinar, which is next week, which is community-driven change, which again, we invite you all in to participate with. We'll hear from Caitlin Hogan, who is a Health Promotions Officer at Women's Health and Wellbeing Barwon Southwest, my colleague, Georgia Linehan from the Sexual Assault Family Violence Centre, and Nicole Sanders from Zonta Club Geelong. So that's Wednesday, 10th of December, 12 p.m. again, RSVP online. And again, Hannah's got the survey up. Please respond if you can, spare a couple of minutes for that. It would really help us out. And yeah, thank you all for coming today. We've got no further questions. They've all been answered. So we will leave it there. Have a fabulous rest of your Wednesday. Thanks.